Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're actually going to work on circle skirts. And circle skirts are really cool garments that you can very easily make at home. I'm going to show you today the Susy skirt out of my collection, not in the blue fabric that you know it, but actually in a very nice dark purple satin, which I think suits the cut of the skirt very well. So if you're interested in that, keep on watching. I just quickly wanted to say as well that I will be going through kinda the basics of how to construct your own circle skirt at the very end of the video. So just as a very quick visualization on how to actually construct them, just stick around to the end of the video and I'm going to show you a small explanation of how to make your own circle skirt. Of course, if you're interested in this specific pattern, which is available from XXS to 3XL, you can go down in the description or in the pinned comment and click on the link, which will lead you directly to the already finished pattern that you can purchase on my Etsy. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the video. So before we begin, I actually quickly wanted to show you the new system of my patterns that some of you might have already discovered, because it's been like 2 or 3 patterns ago that I established this, because I saw a lot of difficulties that you guys had with the system I had before with the puzzle guide and stuff. So I changed it accordingly, and now there are these diamond shapes everywhere on the pattern. You still have to just print it out at 100% scale and then align them accordingly, but now these diamonds actually help you align them because there is only one unique placement where each paper can go according to them. And there's no need to cut anything, no need to size them down to where the printer edge starts, because then your pattern will be too small. Just place page next to page, edge to edge, as usual, and stick them together, tape them together, and that's how you get my patterns. So I hope this is easier now for you guys, and there are not going to be so many questions about how to actually puzzle my patterns together. On the long side of the paper there are letters, and on the short side of the paper there are numbers. And that's just an orientation thing, but once the letters, for example, are through, you start with the alphabet again, but it's like double, so A, A, B, B, and so on and so forth. Not every pattern has that, and also not every pattern is going from A to Z. There might be like some space in between missing, some letters missing. That's because there are like off to the side and the pattern is not on that grid, as it is a square that I have like as a base, and I just put my patterns on it and then I delete stuff. So if there is, I don't know, an X, Y, Z missing and then it starts with A, A, B, B and so on, that means that the pattern is just like there is nothing on the right bottom corner of the pattern, and that's why there are some spaces missing, some letters missing, some numbers missing, whatever. But as I said, there is only one unique way of puzzling this together according to the diamonds, and I hope that this method is easier for you guys and there are less questions on how to puzzle everything together. And I guess let's start with actually puzzling the pattern together. So as you can see right here, I'm literally just putting corner to corner together from the pages that got printed out at 100% scale, and that makes the pattern itself. After I cut it out, there should be 4 pieces in total. I am putting it on my fabric, and it's really important to actually get the grain right on the pattern. So there's always the arrow indicating the grain of the fabric, and you should really watch out for that, because as this is a circle skirt, there will be altering grain lines on the different pattern pieces, and it's really important to have, when you puzzle the skirt together, the same grain line on the seams. Then after that I am cutting my elastic, which I'm using for my waistband, and I'm actually cutting out the length of the smaller size, so just I'm sizing one size down, just for it to have like some elasticity, and I also tend to be on the smaller side on the waist, on the XS, which is why I'm doing this, and I would suggest you do that too, as it was working out very well for me. I then proceed to put interfacing on the waistband and iron it in half, and then on the inner side, hence on the side where there are no notches, I am ironing the seam allowance up, so towards the inside, and then also just like ironing the whole piece so that it lays nice and flat for further use after I put the skirt together. And we're starting with the front pattern piece actually, which was laying on fold while cutting it out. That's why it's double the size, and the right side front piece. Both of those should be laying on the bias at the front dividing seam. According to the arrows on the pattern pieces, if you cut everything correctly, then both of them should be on the bias, and those seams get sewn together from hem to waistline. So as you can see, it's like kind of wrinkly, which is because while you're sewing this, it kind of stretches out. So I am trying to iron everything with the grain. Therefore, I am ironing the skirt in this weird diagonal direction, but this just prevents it from further stretching. I also overlocked the seam once I was done. Now for the left side, as there will be the slit in this side, I am overlocking before I am sewing together. I also quickly wanted to mention that obviously there are prettier ways of finishing the edges than overlocking. You could do French seams, for example, which would be very elegant and fitting for this kind of garment, especially for the satin of the fabric. So you do whatever you feel comfortable with. For me, as I didn't have enough time anymore, overlocking was just the easiest way of finishing my seams. Next up, we are going to actually make the slit. So there should be a notch right there for the slit. You can kind of fiddle it back out if you overlocked over it, or also if you can't find it anymore, just measure the notch on your pattern and just put it on your fabric, and then just sew from waist towards that notch. You also need to cut into the seam allowance at the notch, because you will need that movement once you're done with the slit, or once you actually do what you're seeing right now, which is hiding the raw edge or the overlocked edge of the slit corners. So as you walk, you will very much be able to see the raw edge of your slit seam, which is why I tend to just fold 5mm twice my seam allowance towards the inside and then just top stitch it closely to the fold. And then once you arrive at the notch, which you should have cut into or should have cut towards, I open the seam allowance of the upper seam and then just like stitch 5mm say into that seam allowance, turn 90 degrees, go over towards the other side, also around 5mm, turn again, and then fold my seam allowance twice 5mm again. You can kind of see it here, sorry about the fabric in front of the camera, but I'm literally just doing the same but downwards, so just top stitching it really closely to the fold that I created by folding my seam allowance twice. And in the small window you can see how the whole seam is going to look from the outside and the inside, so you should end up with a neat finishing both inside and out. I then proceed to also iron all of that, so the slit and also the seam allowance open, of course. That's the only way that you can iron it at this point. And be careful, as this is also on the bias, that you do not stretch the seam out too much. I know as you are sewing and top stitching and like folding twice, it will stretch a little bit, but you can try your best to stretch as little as possible. Next up, we're going to continue actually on the right seam, so the side where there is no slit, and we're going to attach the side back piece. So this is also the side seam, but on the right side. This is on the straight grain, so you're going to have a much easier time sewing these pieces together. I also overlock this seam after I'm done sewing. I just do that every time, apart from where the zipper goes in and where the slit is. And then I am ironing the seam allowance towards the back, also with the grain. So in this case, it was just like with the seam, I guess, in the same direction. And then I continue attaching the back piece on, which is also on the bias again. So be careful with that. You will always have to switch between the bias and straight grain with a circle skirt, at least with a full circle skirt, if you cut it out correctly. So be careful, be aware of that there's just this difference between the different seams. After overlocking, this also gets ironed towards the center back. So just in general, a rule I follow: always iron towards the center back or towards the side seam. It's the same thing, but you know what I mean. So you have everything in the right direction, and then continue with the left side back piece, which goes on the other side of the back piece, which is also on the bias, and just sew that together all the way through. Also overlock it, also iron it into the center back. Next up, it's the waistband, and as we already prepared this one to just sew it on, I am pinning the non-ironed up seam allowance onto the waistline of the completely sewn together skirt, And there are notches in the waistband which indicate side seam, center front and center back, so go ahead and pin those together, and then you can also just put some more pins in if needed for in between those notches. And then just put your circle skirt down and the waistband up, as it just is easier, as on the bias everything stretches out a bit, and the walker on your machine will actually help you put the two pieces together, which just makes your work a tiny bit easier, and this is what it should end up looking. Before I continue with the zipper, actually make sure, I forgot it right here, but actually make sure to overlock both side seam edges separately, as we're gonna need that for once the zipper is in place. So go ahead and do that and then follow with this step right here. So I placed the plastic stopper of my zipper just underneath the fold of my waistband, and then also pin the waistband seam upwards into the waistband just for it to afterwards not be visible, like to hide it after we're completely done with this, and then continue to sew the side of the zipper in. This is what it should end up looking, and the easiest way to match up all of the seams is to just put some pins in, which you can use as guidelines for the other side of the zipper band. That's what I like to do, and it actually works out really, really well. I have perfect results almost every time. So you just close the zipper, put the pins in, then open the zipper, and then attach it or pin it to the other side of your skirt, and it works out really well. You can, if you like, I like to do that, I didn't show it here, but you can just close the zipper and check if everything sits correctly, and then continue with sewing the other side of the zipper band in. Once done with that, I like to just close it again and just check again if everything looks nice. As you can see right here, it matches up perfectly. The upper edge of the zipper aligns perfectly with the upper edge of the waistband. So for me, this is completely fine, and I'm ready to continue with the next step, which is actually closing the lower portion of the side seam, which is for me the easiest way. So I like to just sew the zipper in when the side seam is still open and then close it. I know there are a lot of people who do it the other way around. That's just personal preference, I guess. So you do whatever you feel comfortable with. Once done with that, I continue to iron the side seam open, then also press the zipper portion of the side seam just for it to look neat and tidy. We are getting close to the end of this skirt, and we want the waistband, which is still kind of open, to look like this, so to fold down like this. And how we do that is actually folding it the other way, so right sides together, right sides onto the zipper band that we just sewed onto the side seam. I like to just pin it and then turn it around again just to check that the upper edge of the waistband also looks neat and tidy. I do the same thing for the other side and then go over to my sewing machine and sew it in place. The next step is to sew the elastic into place. Honestly, you could have done that in the step previously, just in one go. I kind of forgot about it, so I just do it now, which is still fine. So we just put it onto the seam that we literally just sewed, pin it on there, make sure that the elastic is not twisted, and pin it also the other side, the other raw edge of the elastic onto the previously stitched seam. As there will be some sort of pressure on the elastic once the skirt is worn, I like to kind of bar tack the elastic into place just to make sure that it's not gonna get out of there. And once done with that, we can kind of wiggle the elastic into place, which is gonna look something like this, as the elastic is one size smaller, obviously, otherwise the elastic would literally have no purpose. You kind of have to stretch and then pin. Just make sure that the folded corner of your waistband hides the previously stitched waistline, as this ensures that for the next step, once you top stitch from the outside of the skirt, you will also catch the fold of your inner waistband. So you actually have the outside of your skirt facing up, and you're gonna top stitch very closely to the ditch of your waistline to sew the inner side of your waistband together as well. If you did everything correctly, it should look something like this. You can check again if everything looks neat and tidy, especially also from the inside. Make sure that everything got caught from the inner waistband side, and then we can continue with the hem. So I like to hem my skirts with just, as I already said, folding the seam twice, 5 millimeters, and then just top stitch it close to the fold. I do that all the way around. It can get a little bit tricky because of the altering grain throughout the whole circle, which also especially shows when ironing. So you could get into this area where there will be a lot of like these small kind of wrinkly folds. You can see it right here, which you kind of like iron into the skirt, which is ugly, obviously. And my solution for this is to iron from the other side coming and then just stretching the skirt like into a sharper circle, if that makes sense. And that will release all of those small tiny folds in the hem. Give the whole skirt another overall press just for it to look neat and tidy, and cut off all threads that might still be there, and you're done. Okay, so before we roll the outro and I'm going to show you how the skirt looks worn, I just quickly wanted to talk about the circle skirt in general, and that it's actually not that hard to make yourself. So I kind of want to explain to you how to make your own pattern for circle skirts, because you literally just need 2 measurements to make this. The first one is the inner diameter of your skirt. So in my case, that is my waist measurement. You can simply take that on yourself or whoever the skirt is for that you're making, and it doesn't have to be your waist measurement. It just needs to be the measurement where your skirt is going to end up sitting. So it can be like your waist, it can be 10 centimeters lower, which might be a bit bigger because it goes towards the hip. It can be anywhere. So in my case, that would be 64 centimeters because I'm like an XS in my waist measurement, and I am, as I already explained in the video, using an S as the general pattern size, but for the elastic I'm using an XS just to make it a bit more fitting for me. So I am using, for these calculations and for the explaining purposes and stuff, an S, which is a 68 centimeter waist circumference. And to make a circle out of this measurement, so you only have the circumference basically, is to use the formula 2 times the radius times pi equals the circumference. So I am working with Illustrator right here. So if you are drawing a circle, you don't work with the radius, but actually the diameter, which is why I am using double that measurement that I just said, which is in my case 21.6 centimeters or 216 millimeters, as this is working with millimeters. So this would be your inner waist circumference, circle, whatever. This is the first thing that you need. And then for the next circumference, so there's going to be a big circle around your inner waist circumference circle, which depends on the length of your skirt. So that's the second measurement that you need. You need to establish what length your skirt is going to be. My video is using a length of 70 centimeters. And if this sounds very complicated, don't worry, I have actually a table with all of the numbers that I made for my own purposes, because I'm doing a few circle skirts every now and again, and it's very handy to just have the numbers written down for me, and I don't have to calculate every single time that I'm making a new skirt. So I actually put this up on my website as a freebie. You can go down in the description, there will be a link, and download that if you like to. Just quickly wanted to say all of these are in centimeters, first of all, so they're in the metric system, and then also they are based on how Illustrator works. So you will find a table that says outer as a caption, and these tables have different numbers, 50 centimeters to 100 centimeters, which indicates the length of the circle skirt that you will be able to draw with these numbers. But all of these numbers that you can find in the table are actually the diameter. So if I make a quick example, my skirt that you saw in the video right now is 70 centimeters long, which means for a size S I would need 161.6 centimeters diameter circle for the outer, for the hem basically. and you would put them together. So what that means is that this here, from your hem towards your inner circle, is 70 centimeters. And then you have your inner diameter, or 2 times the radius of your waist circle, which is 21.6 centimeters that we just established before. And then you would have your length of your skirt again, which is another 70 centimeters, which equals out to 161.6 centimeters. So as you see right here, this measurement has 2 times the length and 2 times the radius of your inner circle, all put together already in the number that you can read on the table. So that is what that means. You can, if you are working at home and you're doing this manually on the normal like paper pattern with a compass or with your measuring tape, with a pencil on the other side, just use half of that measurement, because that's going to be the radius, all measured from the very middle point that you will have to establish to make a circle skirt. You will always have a middle point and work from there. So that's just a quick explanation on how my table actually works, or my table, my paper with all of the numbers in. And yeah, that's all you basically need to know. So you would need to measure the inner circle circumference, and then you would need the length of your circle skirt, and then you can calculate everything that you would need for a circle skirt. And I also went ahead and put the measurements for a full circle, half a circle, and 3/4 of a circle for your respective skirts in the table. I hope that makes it a bit clear. I always like to visualize stuff like this so people understand it better. And yeah, let's roll the outro. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that the small explanation at the very end was a bit helpful on how you can construct your own circle skirt, and also that the table that I was talking about might be a bit helpful for you. For me it is, because then I really do not have to calculate anything at all anymore. As I already said in the video, I actually put the radius also on the paper, so not only the diameter, which I can work with as I am working on Illustrator, but also the radius that you guys will have to work with if you're making it on the table on your paper pattern with a compass or with your measuring tape and a pencil at the end. So I actually went ahead and did that for you guys. Link will be down in the description, as well as the link to the pattern. And then I also put a link to the circle skirt calculator that I was using before. So that's just an internet tool that I found, and I was already talking about it. So if you have specific lengths and stuff like that, you can refer to that, and it will already give you all of the numbers as well. If you haven't already, I would highly recommend you subscribe to my channel, as I am uploading videos around sewing and projects and stuff like that every Sunday. Also ring the bell so you get notified whenever I do. And of course, I would love for you to stick around also through the whole week, because I have many sewing related videos on my channel that you might want to watch as well. Also, if you haven't already, give me a follow on my socials, which would be Instagram and TikTok. The handle is the same as here on YouTube, so if you haven't checked it out already, please go ahead and do so and give me a follow there. And I guess that's it for now. I'm going to show you how the skirt looks like worn. That one that I am showing you in the video, and also the one from my collection, so you can see both versions, one with the satin sheen and one without. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!